Hey folks, today we are going to create a soundboard. A soundboard is a musical instrument in which you have buttons which has pre-recorded audio in it, and as a musician, when you want to add a particular sound into the recording which you are doing, you just click on that sound and it gets added. So we are going to create something similar in HTML, JavaScript and CSS today, and it is going to look like this, where there will be 6 buttons and they all have different audio. So if I click on one of them, it should play the audio sound. I hope that was like audible, and this is something which we are going to build today. So let's get started. The first thing we will be doing is we'll be setting up our Visual Studio and the folder and the file structure. Today we are going to do the side-by-side coding. So that means I'll be writing the HTML, and on the right side I'll be rendering the HTML as well. So let's get started. Let's open the HTML file. Let's create a folder called soundboard. Inside this, we are going to add a new HTML file called index.html. And here we will be adding our usual boilerplate code. Now let me go ahead and save this and open this with live server so that we can align this and we can have it side by side. Go view application. Let me adjust both the screens so that we can do the coding and we can see how it is rendering in the HTML as well. Now let me go ahead and create a folder which we are going to call audio, and I'm going to store a couple of audio files in this one, which you can get from the GitHub of the repository, which I'm going to share in the video description. Let's go ahead and copy those files from GitHub to our project folder. Let me just paste them. And these are the 6 sounds which we copied and which we are going to play in our soundboard. So let's go ahead and open the index.html again. In our index.html, let's set the title to soundboard. In the head, let's add a reference to CSS style. So we'll be adding a reference. Let's go ahead and in the body, we will add 6 tags, 6 audio tags. So in case you guys are wondering what the audio tags are, let me Google that. Google audio, and then we can go to the Mozilla documentation. So audio tag is nothing but an HTML tag which allows you to embed the audio into your HTML document. And this is what we are today going to try with our music board. If you want to learn more about this one, you can always go to developer.mozilla.com and you can read the documentation related to audio tag. So back to project. Let's add a couple of audio tags. We'll give it an ID and we're going to put a source. So remember, we already added the source file, so we can directly reference them from our audio folder. Go ahead and start referencing them. And let me close that tag, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple of copy paste just to save some time. And here I'll start changing the files one by one. Next thing we'll do is we'll create a div called buttons where we are going to render those buttons using JavaScript. So let's add a div with ID buttons. And in the end, we are going to add the reference to our script file, that is JavaScript file. So let's add that. Let's head over to our JavaScript file. So let's go add another file called index.js, and inside this we are going to code to add the buttons to the UI, as well as we'll be adding the sound, and also we'll be adding the mechanism so that sounds will be played when we will be clicking those buttons. So we have an array of sounds in which I'm going to name the same files which we are using. So I created a constant array containing all the 6 sounds, that is applause, boo, gasp, ta-da, and victory, and wrong. The next thing I want to do is I want to loop over all the array elements using the inbuilt for each, and here we are going to use the arrow method, inside which we are going to pass each sound, and with each sound I want to assign it to a button by creating a new element. I'm going to create a new element which will be of type button. Next thing I'm going to do is I want to add class to this. So let's go ahead and grab the class list and add the class btn. That's a CSS class which we'll be adding later on. And the next thing we'll do is we'll add the inner text to the button, and that will be similar to each sound we have in the sounds array. So far so good. So let's move back to our folder, the project folder, and we'll be creating now a CSS style sheet. We'll be creating a CSS style sheet to style our application, because right now if we go ahead and try to see, I don't think we're not seeing anything. So let's go ahead and add a CSS. Let's add a CSS called style.css. Inside this, we are going to define a wildcard style, which will be box sizing, and we are just going to set it to border box. Next, we are going to set the values for the body field or the body HTML. We'll be setting a background color to violet. We'll be setting font family to sans serif. We'll be setting display to flex, flex wrap to wrap. We'll be aligning the items to center. We'll be also justifying the content in center. The height, we want to use 100% of it, so we are going to use 100 VH so that all the available height will be used. We are going to align the text to the center. We want to make sure there's no overflow, so we are going to set the overflow to hidden. And in the end, I want to set margin to 0. Let's add the styles to button element as well. To button element, I'm going to set a background color of dark violet. Border radius, I'll be setting to 5 pixel. Border, I'm going to set to none. Color, I'll be using a cream color with hexadecimal value. Margin, I'm going to set to 1 rem. Padding 1.5 rem and 3 rem on the other sides. Font size 1.2 rem. Font family we are just going to inherit, and the cursor I'm going to set to pointer. Let's go ahead in our index.js file, and we haven't appended that button element to HTML yet. So let's go ahead and do that. What I'll do is I'll select the button div by using get element by ID, and this will be passing. And this will be passing buttons, and to this we will append the child, and that will be our button element. So let's go ahead and save this, and yeah, you can see the buttons. Right now they don't do anything, so that's fine. Let's go ahead and focus on our slides again. So what I want to do is, like, when I hover, I want the color to change. Also, I want to remove the outline when the focus is on the button. So let's go ahead and do that. Now our soundboard is looking much better, and also it is responsive. So if I increase or I decrease, it is self-adjusting the space. So right now, if I click on any of these, we don't hear any voices, we don't hear any audio. That's because the audio is not hooked up yet. So what we want to do is we want to go back to our index.js, and here we want to make sure that we are adding a click event listener, and we have to also make sure we'll make sure that we are adding a click event listener. So we are going to add click event listener on each of the button. We are going to grab that element by the ID, and since this element is of type audio does have a function which is called play, so that we can invoke on each of the buttons. So let's go ahead and save this one and try to see if our buttons are working correctly or not. Now it's working, but there is a problem. What happens if I click on each of the buttons simultaneously? So now you hear that all the sounds are like overlapping. So what we want to make sure is that once a button is playing and I'm clicking on another button, I want to stop the first button playing and making sure that only one button is playing music at a time. To do that, what we want to do is we will be adding a function called stop sound in the event listener. Whenever the click happens, we are going to stop all the sound and only going to play the sound on which the click has happened. So let me go ahead and define this function outside. Let's call it function stop sound. And in this, I'm just going to take our sounds array, and I'm going to iterate over each element, that is our sound element, and we want to take the element with the name. I'm going to store that into a constant called track. On that track, because it's an audio input tag, that's why we can call pause and we can stop the sound. Let's go ahead and do that. Now track.pause is just going to pause the soundtrack. But what we want to make sure is that soundtrack is also getting set to the initial setting. Let's think of a song that I played for like 1 minute and then I paused it. Or the next time I want to play that sound again, I don't want to play that from 1 minute. I want to play that from. So to do that, what we can do is we can set the current time to 0. So the next time that audio is going to play, it will be playing from beginning. So that's it. I think we are done with our project. Let's go ahead and test that one. So I'm going to click on applause and then boom and gasp. So now our soundtracks are running perfectly, and once I'm clicking the soundtrack, the other soundtracks are getting stopped. So that at the same, so at a time we are just hearing one soundtrack, which is great. So that's it for the soundboard. I hope you guys like this project. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe button as well. That motivates me to create more videos for you guys. And I'll see you guys in the next video with an amazing project.